You have stepped into a season where the thing that was held back did not disappear, and that matters because your heart has been tempted to call delay the same thing as denial. On days like this, the table in your house can look ordinary, the bill folded under a magnet can look harmless, and the silence around your phone can feel heavier than any voice. You may have counted what left your hands and wondered why the numbers seemed to stop answering you, but the unseen tally was never lost. The place where you sat, the cup you drank from, the drawer where you kept the papers, all of it can carry the feeling of waiting without explanation. Still, the waiting has not been empty, and the hidden wait has not been wasted. Your spirit has been learning how to stand without performing, how to keep breathing when the answer has not yet arrived, and how to refuse the old sentence that says, "It is over." What was retained was not erased, and what was delayed was not destroyed. There is a difference between a closed door and a guarded one. Today, you are being taught to recognize that difference. The hand that seemed empty is not always empty in the final account. The heart that looks tired is not always defeated. Sometimes it is only becoming steady enough to receive what is returning. And when what belonged to you begins to move again, you will know that heaven was not absent. It was working beyond the surface you could touch. You know the feeling of checking the same message twice, then a third time, as if one more look could pull the answer out of the screen. The kitchen light may have been on, the sink may have been full, and still your mind was living somewhere else, measuring what should have arrived by now. You washed the same plate slowly, or sat on the edge of the bed with your elbows on your knees, and the weight settled into your shoulders like a small stone. Your chest tightened, because money is never just money when it has been tied to responsibility, dignity, and the quiet promises you made before anyone else was listening. There is a kind of ache that comes when you have done what was asked of you, and still the return has not shown its face. That ache does not make you weak. It reveals how deeply you were carrying more than arithmetic. The story of the woman who kept attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. Receiving a little oil until the vessels were full reminds you that lack does not get the last word when provision is near, and that echo matters here because your own house has known that same suspended moment. You are not being asked to deny the pressure. You are being asked to notice that the pressure never became your name. The old interpretation said you were being overlooked, but a truer reading says you were being held in a timing you could not control. Even now, the body remembers the strain, yet the spirit begins to answer with steadiness, and that steadiness becomes the first crack where light can enter. If you have felt the urge to measure your worth by the gap between what you gave and what came back, then you have been standing at the wrong altar. A person can carry a receipt in one hand and a prayer in the other and still feel ashamed when the numbers do not match, especially when the day is long and the work is honest. In the late hours, when the room is quiet and the fan turns above you, your thoughts can become sharp enough to accuse you of trusting too much, or waiting too late. Your jaw tightens, your hands stay restless, and the sentence that rises inside you is often not spoken aloud. Did I miss my chance? That question sounds practical, but underneath it sits fear, comparison, and the old habit of believing that what has not yet arrived is already gone. The revelation being restored to you is gentler and stronger than that. It says your labor was seen, your endurance was not wasted, and your season was not defined by the delay alone. What was retained can be released with purpose, and what returns can come with meaning, not only with relief. There is tension here because the human mind wants immediate closure, while the soul is being trained to recognize a deeper accounting. You may not be able to see the whole ledger, but you can see the pattern of preservation. The enemy of your peace would love to call that emptiness final, yet it is only unfinished, and unfinished things still belong to the hand of God. You have noticed perhaps more than once how certain rooms make waiting feel louder. A chair by the window, a phone face down on the pillow, a folder on the counter, each object can become a witness to the time you spent hoping without applause. There is something holy in the way ordinary things carry memory, because the same table that held your worry can also hold your testimony. When you sat there with your shoulders curled inward, you were not merely anxious. You were enduring the weight of uncertainty without letting it erase your gentleness. Your breathing may have gone shallow, your thoughts may have narrowed, and still you kept showing up to the day that did not explain itself. That persistence is not small. It is the kind of hidden obedience that rarely gets celebrated, yet it builds a future strong enough to hold returning blessing without shaking apart. The spiritual meaning being revealed is not that hardship was pleasant, but that preservation was active even when you could not name it. The opposition wants to teach you to call yourself forgotten, but the truth is that forgetting is not what has been happening. Covering has been happening, guarding has been happening, and now the sealed things are beginning to loosen. If you ever thought your consistency was invisible, the moment of return will prove otherwise. The same hands that kept working with little will know how to receive with peace. You may have felt the sting of seeing other people move ahead while your own answer seemed tied up somewhere out of sight. At work, in the car, or standing in line at the store, you can suddenly feel the comparison rise like a cold draft, and it does not ask permission before it enters. The body knows this feeling before the mind admits it. The throat gets tight, the eyes grow tired, and the shoulders carry a weight that belongs to disappointment. Yet disappointment is not the end of your discernment. It can become the place where false urgency loses its power and where your heart learns to separate noise from direction. The old story said you were behind, but that story never measured the unseen work being done in you. You were being made ready to carry a return without panic. That is a different strength. It does not need to announce itself. It simply stays steady while the rest of the room grows loud. There is tension because the world often rewards speed, but your restoration is not governed by speed alone. It is governed by fit, timing, and mercy. When what was yours comes back, it will not arrive as a fragment of hope. It will arrive with enough weight to confirm that nothing essential was lost. And that is why the pressure you felt was never proof of abandonment. It was the edge of a threshold. Think about the small signs that usually pass unnoticed. The envelope that stayed unopened, the transfer that seemed delayed, the cash that had to stretch one more week than you expected. Those details shape a person more than they admit, because they teach the body to live in caution and the heart to brace before it reaches. You can feel that bracing in the way your fingers grip your cup or in the way you pause before checking your balance. The mind says it is only practical, but the soul knows it has been carrying grief in miniature. Even so, there is a mercy in the pause, because it shows you what you no longer want to live under. You do not want to be ruled by fear every time a need arises. You do not want your peace to depend on the mood of a bank statement. What is being restored now is not only provision, but the dignity to receive it without apology. The tension remains because the memory of lack can linger longer than the lack itself. Yet memory does not have authority over what is presently being opened. The return does not erase what you walked through. It redeems the way you walked through it. And when that redemption becomes visible, you will know that the hand of God was working in the places where your own strength ran out. There are moments when the room seems to hold its breath with you, like the whole house knows you're waiting for news but will not speak first. A ceiling fan turns slowly, a spoon rests in the sink, a distant motorcycle passes outside, and the ordinary sounds make the waiting feel even more personal. Your chest may feel tender in that stillness, as if even hope has learned to move carefully. That tenderness is not weakness. It is evidence that you have remained open in a season that could have made you hard. The old survival instinct wants to close the heart, count only what is visible, and stop expecting anything beyond the minimum. But a different invitation is being whispered now. It says that what was held back did not stop being yours. It says the account was not forgotten. It says the return can be measured not only in amount, but in mercy. You have been taught to endure without spectacle, and that endurance has become a vessel. The vessel is not empty because it is broken. It is ready because it remained. Some things can only be received by the person who did not shut down in the waiting. If the delay had not sharpened your discernment, you might have mistaken a smaller answer for the whole blessing. Instead, you are being prepared to recognize the real thing when it moves. And that recognition will be quieter than you expected, but stronger than you imagined. You have lived enough to know that some losses are loud and others are silent, and the silent ones can shape you the most. A delayed payment, a cancelled plan, a promise that stalled in the middle of conversation, all of that can leave a bruise no one else sees. You may have smiled through it at the family table, then sat alone later and felt the ache rise behind your eyes. The body carries what the mouth does not say, and the body has often been the first to confess the strain. Your hands may have gone still, your breathing may have changed, and your mind may have drifted toward the sentence, "I have had enough." Yet even that sentence is not the final word over you. There is a line being rewritten beneath the surface, and it says that enough was never the same as finished. God's work in hidden seasons often looks like restraint to human eyes, but restraint can be protection when the timing of a return matters. The opposition would rush you into despair or make you settle for crumbs, but neither of those belongs to your covenant path. You're not being trained for crumbs. You're being taught how to recognize fullness when it arrives. The difference matters because the heart that has been starved can accept almost anything, while the healed heart can discern what truly belongs, and discernment is part of your return. The next sign is subtle, but you have already been feeling it in the way your spirit resists old explanations. You do not believe every voice that says it was all for nothing, and that resistance is not stubbornness, it is awakening. On the surface, your day still looks like dishes, errands, messages, and routines, but beneath that surface, a different awareness is forming. The awareness says something is turning back toward you. The awareness says the sealed place is not dead. The awareness says your waiting was not a grave, but a guarded room. If even one of these signs has settled into you, if your shoulders have dropped even once while hearing this, type 888 in the comments. Type 888 and let it be your quiet agreement with what is being opened. It is the sound of overflow, spoken simply, without strain and without performance. Then come back to me. Come back to the steady place where the waiting is being interpreted differently. Come back, because the next movement depends on you, not abandoning the moment the recognition arrives. The return is not only external, it begins with your consent. And once consent is present, fear loses one more place to hide. You have probably noticed that when hope begins to stir, the body can react before the mind can explain it. A small lift in the chest, a slower breath, a hand that unclenches on its own. These are not random gestures. They are signs that your inner life is reordering itself around a different expectation. You may still be driving the same streets, unlocking the same door, or putting groceries away in the same kitchen, but something in you is no longer agreeing with the old narrative. That matters. The story of scarcity wants to keep speaking in the voice of inevitability. Yet inevitability is not the same as truth. What is being revealed now is that the withheld thing can return without ruining you. It can come back with peace attached to it. It can come back with clarity. It can come back in a way that teaches you how to steward instead of panic. There is still tension because receiving after long waiting can feel unfamiliar, almost too quiet for the weight of it. But quiet is often how the deepest confirmations arrive. The old life trained you to brace for bad news, while this season is training you to receive good news without suspicion. That is a holy adjustment. It prepares your hands for what your heart has asked for, and it prepares your heart for what your hands will soon hold. You do not have to keep proving that you suffered enough to deserve relief. That is one of the cruel lies people learn when money has been tight and the future has looked narrower than the road ahead. You have already lived with enough pressure to know the difference between a passing inconvenience and a real burden. The difference is in the sleep that disappears, the appetite that changes, the quiet way you keep sorting bills in your mind even when you are trying to rest. None of that is imaginary, but neither is the mercy that has kept you from collapsing into despair. The return being spoken over you is not a performance of abundance. It is restoration with wisdom. It is the kind of restoration that does not mock your history. It honors it. The opposition wants you to think that receiving will make you owe the past an apology, but that is not how grace works. Grace lifts without shaming. Grace restores without theatrics. Grace arrives in the same life that once felt strained and makes room where there was no room before. So when the sign comes, do not dismiss it because it is smaller than your frustration. Small signs often carry the first breath of a much larger move, and the first breath is enough to tell you the room is changing. There is a sacredness in the way you keep moving through everyday tasks while carrying this hope. You may fold laundry, answer calls, or prepare a meal, and all the while something inside you is listening for a different kind of knock. The sound of a message arriving, the ring of a phone, the simple opening of an app you would stop checking every hour. Each of those ordinary moments can become charged with expectation. Expectation changes posture. It turns the shoulders from collapsing inward to standing a little more upright. It turns the eyes from scanning for lack to recognizing possibility. That shift is part of the return because it shows the heart is no longer living entirely in retreat. The spiritual meaning here is not fantasy, it is restoration of readiness. You are being made ready to receive without losing yourself in the shock of it. The old fear said that if something good returned, you would not know how to hold it, but that fear is already being answered. You are learning how to hold what matters with both humility and confidence, and that learning is not wasted time, it is preparation. The thing that was retained did not vanish from your story. It was waiting for a version of you that could carry it differently. You may still remember the place where the pressure felt sharpest, maybe near the end of the month, maybe in the quiet gap between obligations, maybe in the car when you realized the tank and the account both needed filling. Those moments leave traces in the body, and the body remembers them long after the calendar changes. A tight throat, a tired forehead, a slow exhale after you close the door. These are the marks of carrying too much in silence. Yet silence can also become the space where a new reading of your life is formed, What looked like abandonment was often a hidden protection against receiving too early, too small, or in a way that would have cost you more than you could see. That is a difficult truth, because waiting hurts, but it is still a gentler truth than hopelessness. You were not being overlooked by the one who holds time. You were being sheltered inside it. There is a difference between being denied and being deferred for a deeper purpose. One says you are forgotten. The other says you are being readied. The contrast matters, because it changes the emotion attached to every delay you have carried. And as that emotion changes, your heart begins to loosen its grip on accusation. Let your mind return to the simple evidence, the bills that were paid in fragments, the provision that came through unexpected help, the day you thought nothing would change, and then one small thing did. Those are not accidents. They are tiny witnesses that the unseen hand has been near. You might have dismissed them because they were not dramatic enough, but the kingdom often speaks in ways the proud overlook. Your tired eyes know the difference between noise and substance, and your spirit is learning to trust substance. The substance is that you were not left alone to manage the whole burden by yourself. Even when the help looked delayed, the path was being quietly cleared. There is no need to inflate that truth into fantasy. It is enough that the door is opening the way doors open when they have been held for a reason. If you had been rushed, you might have grabbed the first thing that looked like relief and missed the deeper gift. But because you have endured, you are beginning to distinguish between relief that fades and restoration that remains. That discernment becomes the bridge into the next movement, where the waiting itself starts to look different from inside. The image that has been growing in these words is one of a sealed storehouse, and now you can feel why it matters. A storehouse is not the same as emptiness. It is a place where something valuable has been kept under protection until the right moment. You may have walked past your own life, thinking only of what was absent, but there has been a guarding over what was not meant to be spoiled. The inventory of your days has not been erased. It has been preserved. In the same way a farmer waits for the dry season before opening the grain, you have been kept from premature loss and from the waste that comes when timing is ignored. The body may not know how to celebrate that immediately, because the body remembers the cost of waiting more than it remembers the logic of preservation. Still, the heart begins to understand that guarded does not mean denied. What was stored was never lost to the owner. It was only held until the hand could receive it cleanly. That is why the tension around your life has felt so strange. You were standing near abundance while living through restraint, and the contrast was part of the lesson. The next shift will not erase the restraint, but it will explain it. When you wake before dawn and the house is still, your thoughts can become very honest. There's no performance in that hour, no audience, no noise to cover what you feel. The lamp by the bed, the glass of water on the nightstand, the folded blanket at the foot of the mattress, all of it becomes part of a private chapel where you have been learning how to wait. Your breathing in that hour has probably told the truth better than your words have. Sometimes it came quick and uneasy, and sometimes it slowed, as if your body was beginning to believe that panic was not the only possible response. That change is significant. It means your inner life is no longer trapped in the first interpretation of the story. The spiritual meaning being returned to you is one of stewardship over the waiting itself. You are not wasting time when you keep your soul from collapsing. You are preparing the ground where blessing can land without being scattered by fear. The opposition wants to make you feel foolish for hoping again, but hope is not foolish when it is anchored in what has already preserved you. It is wiser than cynicism, and it is cleaner than forced positivity. So the next time the room is quiet, listen for the difference between emptiness and expectancy. They do not sound the same anymore. The first return begins in your posture. You stop hunching over every unknown, as if your body must carry the burden before the answer arrives. You stand a little straighter when you reach for your phone, and you notice that you are no longer expecting every message to disappoint you. That small bodily shift is a form of agreement. It says you are done rehearsing defeat. It says the old script is losing its hold. The hand that used to check and recheck can begin to rest. The eyes that used to scan for signs of loss can begin to look for signs of mercy. This does not mean the history of the pressure disappears. It means the pressure is no longer the master of your attention. What is being revealed now is that the same discipline that helped you survive can become the same discipline that helps you receive. You learned how to endure with restraint. Now you are learning how to receive with trust. There is a bridge between those two things, and it is built out of obedience, quietness, and discernment. If you cross it, you will find that the return is not only about what comes back to you, but about who you become while holding it. You have probably had to keep certain hopes tucked away because speaking them too loudly felt dangerous. In some rooms, too much expectation invites mocking, and in some seasons the safest thing feels like silence. But silence is changing now. It is no longer the silence of suppression, it is the silence of readiness. There is a difference between the two, and your heart can feel it in the body before the mind names it. The shoulders soften, the breath deepens, and the inner sentence becomes less desperate. Instead of saying, "Please let something happen," you begin to say, "I am ready to recognize what is mine." That is a mature prayer. It does not force outcomes. It makes room for them. The spiritual meaning here is that readiness itself is being returned to you. You are not only waiting for provision, you are being restored to the posture that can steward provision well. The tension remains because not everything changes at once, and some days will still feel like old days. But old days no longer have the final authority over what is unfolding. The sealed season is giving way to a season of recognition, and recognition changes everything. It teaches your hands how to welcome without fear, and your heart how to breathe without apology. You may have noticed that some people only see the shortage and never see the faith it took to survive it. They do not know what it cost you to stay kind when you were tired, or to keep your obligations when your margin was thin. They do not know the private calculations, the quiet sacrifices, the way you made one thing stretch because you refused to abandon your responsibilities. That hidden faithfulness matters. It becomes part of the story that a future answer will confirm. What was retained from you is not just about money, it is about the dignity of having remained faithful under pressure. The return, then, is not a trophy. It is a confirmation. It says your hands were not foolish to keep holding, and your heart was not naive to keep hoping. The risk in this season is bitterness, because bitterness tries to convince you that only what is seen counts as real. But your life has already disproved that lie. The unseen has been active all along. The next time your mind starts revisiting what was missing, answer it with what was preserved. Preservation is not a smaller miracle. It is the miracle that makes the larger one safe to receive. The metaphor of the sealed storehouse keeps widening, and you can feel it now as more than an image. It is a way of naming the quiet custody over your life. A sealed place is not abandoned, it is secured. A held thing is not dead, it is reserved. That distinction matters because the human heart often interprets stillness as absence, when sometimes stillness is only protection. In your own story, there were days when movement would have cost too much, when haste would have made you settle, when pressure would have pushed you into a lesser version of what was meant for you. The restraint you resented was also the mercy that protected the whole. That is hard to see while you are inside it. It becomes clearer only when the seal begins to loosen and the contents prove they were never ruined. Your body may still remember the strain, but it will also remember the relief of seeing that the guarded thing survived. The spiritual contrast is sharp. The old reading said the storehouse was empty, while the new reading says it was waiting. And what waits under heaven's care does not decay the way fear predicted. It returns with purpose. Sit with that for a moment and let your breathing catch up to what your spirit is hearing. If this is landing in you, write "Eu vejo isso" in the comments and then come back to me. Write those words because attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuzazuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.